Mill starts crying BC we don't want to see her. I posted a lot in the sub, long history of posts, but if you want to know about my situation, the situation with Mill covers it all. Basically we had no real relationship for the last 10 years, she wasn't close with DH either, and now since my pregnancy and baby arriving she's gone into full crazy mode. Overbearing, boundary stomping, constant criticisms, refusing to give baby back, making comments about me not changing baby's diaper in a timely fashion, false comments, and having some kind of entitlement/competition with Phil. They're divorced, for visits. We honestly have not seen her often at all since baby came BC. Her first PP visit set the tone and it was awful. So we throttled to like once every couple months for 45 minutes. Anyway, in June I tried to set a boundary around giving baby back when crying and she didn't like it. It turned into me confronting her on all her behavior and her just denying and then telling me I'm taking it all the wrong way before offering a disingenuous apology. We haven't seen her since June. Last week we went to Phil's house for BIL's birthday. I guess she found out through BIL. We don't have any arrangements for BIL and Sil to keep things to themselves, like we don't care to have them involved in any way. So it must have come out in passing that me and DH and Lo went to see Phil. She calls DH yesterday asking what we did on the HR weekend. He said nothing. She said, well, you went to your father's house, how was that? Then she started saying it's nice that Phil gets to see Lo and she misses Lo and wants to see her. DH said, well, we have some unresolved issues with you and we need some time. Nothing is happening right now, we're not doing any visits ATM. She first again kept saying she's only been trying to help and that we don't understand where she's coming from. Then she admitted that her visits after baby arrived were a bit too much and that looking back she can see why it was an issue. Then she started bawling, telling DH that she hates that they don't have a close relationship. The convo ended with her saying, when we are ready to reach out. Here's where I'm at. I don't want to hold grudges and be mad about things forever. My parents have crossed boundaries but we have good communication and we are close, so the situation feels different. I also am really irritated with Mill now. She's just put a really sour taste in my mouth and I have anxiety when she's near my child. I'm willing to work on DH lead. But I told him for visits I do want a buffer BC. He seems to check out every time. It's like a trauma response or something for him and he just escapes mentally. So I said, if you're not capable of being present then I want my sister or best friend around as a buffer. He suggested BIL and Sil, but Sil had flying monkey tendencies and I don't want to feel ganged up on as they take my baby and fuss all over her, leaving me to sit there and be annoyed. I'd rather have someone from my team if that makes sense. Sil is Mill's other son's fiancé but they get along. Lo birthday is coming up next month, so I suggested to DH that I'd have a few friends over and Mill can swing by for a bit. He said that that scenario might be too weird and he's okay with just waiting things out a little. Also, I'm a little annoyed that she is now remorseful that her and DH aren't close. This whole time it didn't bother her enough to want to do anything about it, but now that she realizes Phil will see Lo more, the waterworks come on. Maybe it's genuine. I don't know. She also just retired and is realizing it's lonely as hell, so maybe it's all coming to a head for her. I plan on following DH lead but I'm just feeling guilt BC. I heard she cried. I just don't know what to do to stop feeling this guilt. DH doesn't want to seem to resolve things with her in the sense of having a normal relationship with her. For him he wants minimal visits. It's just that he checks out for those and I've been left to deal with her, so I want a buffer, i.e. a friend or my sis. But DH says that will just be awkward for everyone. So should I suck it up and allow the minimal visits the way he wants to do them, with BIL and Sil present? DH won't push for anything. I just don't want to feel guilty or feel like I'm the one standing in the way of visits. Thoughts? Comment. She has showed you who she is. I think you should believe her. She wants to see Lo because she is jealous of Phil's relationship with its Lo and you both. DH says you having a friend or family member there for you will be awkward. It's going to be awkward because he checks out and Jane Mill is toxic and won't follow the boundaries you set. I would put my foot down on having at least one person to be there that is on your side and who can also be a witness to any of just No's antics. I truly think you and DH should keep the relationship with his mom, that you always had before Lo. But that's my opinion, and if you and DH want to try, that's your choice. Please remember that boundaries are something that you set as things you will or won't put up with, so when she breaks a boundary, you have to have a consequence that you both have agreed on. That's the only way she is going to learn and the only way there can be any functioning relationship with her. Best of luck with all of this. Remember that fair doesn't mean even. You decide on how much time you are willing to give anyone in your lives, and it shouldn't be based on how much time you spend with others. Guilt is the enemy. Prioritize yourself, because trust me, no one else will. Definitely won't. That's why he checks out and makes you deal with his mother. Make him responsible for the visits and take yourself out of the loop. Moms need time to themselves. Take it while he fulfills his responsibilities to his mom. If Mil wants you to be coordinating family stuff and including her, she needs to work on a close relationship with you. Otherwise she gets and is checking out. If you are compromising and allowing the minimal visits he wants, then he should compromise and allow your sis/friend to come. Bil and Sil don't seem to understand the situation or be in your corner. He don't get to check out and set the visits up in a way that only makes him comfortable. But you aren't standing in the way. You suggested more visits with a protective buffer, and his response was to wait her out and do 0 visits until then. If he's mentally checking out, then he doesn't even want those visits. So let him take the lead. If he doesn't want any visits with his mother, then you don't have to work to facilitate visits. Right now, this is between them and only them. Tears are a manipulation tactic. Right now, they are manipulating you into becoming Mil's flying monkey. You feel bad for the poor relationship she has with her son, so you want to facilitate more visits and more relationship, even though you don't want that yourself. Stop letting her manipulate you. Tell that you guys can work on agreed boundaries when he is ready to resume a relationship with his mother. Then drop the issue, walk out of the room when she calls, and enjoy your low. I'm saying, as a kid of this kind of situation, you need to cut her off. She will never act properly because she's shown you that she won't. Think about it. Is there any evidence that will fulfill any expectations you have for her? You need to treat people how they teach you. You need a buffer for Mil to even be near her. She repeatedly acts like she doesn't care. She doesn't care about you or what you want or what you ask. She has shown you that she won't change. If you took away mom and put something like BF, she'd be arrested for obsession and harassment. Would you tolerate a partner treating your child like your Mil does you? No. Because it's abusive behavior. Does she get away with this just by being a Mil? Does that allow her to abuse people? No. Mil will never change. She's forced you to practically ask her to treat you like a human being, and she said no. There are so many red flags. The aliens can see a giant splotch of red on our planet from 2 galaxies away. Next story 2. My grandmother has despised me since the day I was born. So, this is not about my mother, but my grandmother. I was thinking about the whole thing today, and how messed up it is. Basically, my grandma despised my father from the get-go. There was no reason. She just takes very strong disliking to people, like the numerous times she's taking random dislikes to waitresses or cashiers and refuses to visit the restaurants ever again, but this was a lot more serious of a dislike. My mother was a barely functioning alcoholic with manic depression and bipolar when he met her. She already had 3 kids to different dads. My dad helped to get her clean, and got her out of the hellhole she was living in. My grandma was used to having full control of her daughter, and I don't think she cared what state my mom was in, as long as she had final say. My dad obviously changed that. My grandma was extremely angry when I was born. My dad recounts that she had sat in the hospital with just a look of pure hatred. I guess it made sense to her that since she hated my dad, she'd have to hate me too. It didn't take me very long to realize this. One of my earliest memories was playing in her garden with my cousin. I was around 6. He had kicked a ball into her vegetable patch, and she came outside raging because she thought it was me. I remember crying and trying to tell her I didn't do it. My cousin admitted it was him, and all of a sudden it was fine. She wasn't bothered. I remember being terrified of her for most of my childhood. I didn't like visiting her. I would hide if she visited us, and she would pretty much pick on me for everything. When my parents divorced, I had a really hard time sleeping on my own. I was 8 years old and I'd sleep with my mom most nights. My grandma was very triggered by this, and every time I saw her she'd basically bully me for it. Why don't you sleep on your own? It's not right to sleep with your mom, or that's what babies do. It's unacceptable. She would not stop talking about it. Then, a few years later, my nephew was doing the same thing. He slept with my sister until he was 9, and she never said a word about it. I thought that was so cruel. The family knew she didn't like me, and it was just accepted. My mom would sometimes have it out with her about why she doesn't treat me like my cousins or siblings, but most of the time nothing was said. Her house was covered in pictures of all her grandkids, there was maybe one or two of me, and then they got replaced. I think the worst instance was when I was around 7 or 8, and I took a day of school. I wasn't sick, but I was getting bullied pretty bad and just didn't want to go in. My dad allowed me to stay off. She found out about it, and arrived at our house guns blazing. She screamed at me for missing school. She had a huge argument with my dad, where she was actually referring to me as a little bitch, and from then on I didn't dare miss school for fear it would happen again. Over the years, it would just be many incidents similar. Like the time we were out with my mom and I got so car sick that I asked if I could sit in the front seat of the car. That would have meant she had to sit in the back, and she started yelling at me for wanting special treatment. Or the time she threatened to discipline me for looking at her the wrong way. As I grew older, like hit the teens, it kinda died off. She knew she couldn't get away with it anymore, and so instead she became unbearably fake. Like I knew she hated my guts, she didn't need to pretend. I'm living in a different country now. I very rarely see her, thank God. I never hear from her. Sometimes if my mom phones me and she happens to be with her, my mom will force her to talk to me, lasts for like 10 seconds LMAO. I just think looking back, it's so sad to treat a child like that, for no reason other than the fact you hate their parent. She was always so incredibly kind and generous to my cousins and siblings, they never even got an ounce of the treatment I had. She caused a lot of trauma in my childhood, and it was all brought back to me in a dream last night. Sometimes it's hard for me to understand why she treated me like that. I really wanted her to love me at times, but I've made peace with it now. Comment. Both your parents were abject failures as parents to tolerate this cruelty, and I hope Granny one day rues the day she was ever born, be it this life or next. Unfortunately, the laws in family court leave much to be desired. However, your parents were both still contributing to the abuse by enabling your grandmother. I don't know if your father could/would have petitioned for custody of you, citing the abuse by your evil grandmother, but he sure as hell should have done more. It would have made a huge difference to know someone in your life had your back, and getting you into therapy probably would have done a world of good. Your mom is as big or a bigger problem. Anytime I was forced to talk to her, I'd just say, "What's up, you old hag," or "Hey grand bitch," or something similar. I would only call her by her first name since she does not deserve the grandmother name. I regretfully inform you that you are in fact here because of your mother. She cannot control what anyone else says or does, and she may have been fearful, lonely, or hard-pressed after her divorce, but the fact that to this day she forces you into contact with that beast proves that your mother is fundamentally weak and self-centered. You deserved better then, and you deserve better now. I called mine Grand Monster. To let you know the relationship, when she died, I literally went to the viewing, started tapping on her head, and when asked why, I said I was just making sure. On my way out, I sang ding dong, the bitch is dead, the evil bitch is dead. I sat at her funeral with a smile on my face. It's hard growing up knowing that someone who should love you hates your very existence. As a grandma now myself, I will never understand how someone can do that either. His sounds so awful, and as a mom I can't imagine allowing anyone to treat my child like this. My mill sometimes says mean things to my daughter who is only 1, and I stop it right there. No one does that. Your mom failed you. Adults in your life failed you. There was no excuse, no reason to traumatize a child, and your grandmother didn't care. If she is already doing this to a 1-year-old, then the child deserves better than to be forced to be abused by her as she grows up. Mill does not deserve access to your child, ever. I hope that you love your child more than you wish to appease a person who abused her as a baby. Anyone willing to abuse a baby should never be allowed access to the child again for any reason.